Welcome to This Week from the Principal's Desk, a podcast about Lutheran schools and their leadership. This podcast is hosted by two Lutheran school leaders. My name is Rob Lunak, and I'm the Superintendent of Lutheran Neighborhood Schools in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
My name is Mike Sheeman, and I'm principal at Bethany Lutheran School in Parma, Ohio. And today's another one of those episodes where we're excited because we get to hear more than just you and me, Rob. We have a guest live with us. And as happens in Lutheran schools, when you get a chance to work with people and serve with people, not only are they colleagues, but they become friends as well. So I'm excited to not just welcome a colleague to the podcast, but a friend as well. And I'd like to have him introduce himself, but I'd like to invite on Kevin Creutz, who's the superintendent for Lutheran schools here in Ohio. So Kevin, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do. It'd be great to start that way.
All right. Kevin Creutz. I'm superintendent of schools for the Lutheran Schools of Ohio. So I help support Lutheran education here in the Ohio district. And we have 18 elementary schools, 2 high schools, and about 35 early childhood, standalone early childhood programs for about 55 total schools. And been here for almost 6 years now and really enjoy the opportunity that I have to be involved in many different ministries and many different schools. And the number one thing I do is working with administrators, especially the elementary school principals. And so that takes up most of my time, but it's also probably the most enjoyable part of my job to be able to impact students and teachers through the administrators in our schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And you've certainly made an impact on me and the ministry here at Bethany, and I've appreciated your support. I know, Kevin, we have a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are maybe newer in administration or maybe coming into that a little bit. And so I think the role of an ed exec might be somewhat new or maybe somewhat foreign to some of our administrators. So in your role as ed exec, you talked about supporting the principals. What would you say are kind of like the top things that you do to support administrators in schools, or reasons why an administrator might reach out to an ed exec?
Mm-hmm. So in Lutheran education, it's a little bit unique where the district office or the superintendent or the education executive, really we serve in a support role or a resource role. There's not a lot that we do to dictate, to tell you what you have to do. But we are here to support you in any way possible, to support the administrators in any way possible. So it could be anything from a staffing issue, whether there's a concern with a teacher or staff member, or there's an opening and you need help with the call process. Our Lutheran schools still have some responsibilities as far as maybe your state Department of Education goes. So we can provide support and resources when it comes to licensing for teachers or completing state reports. Or in Ohio, we're a school choice state, so we have a lot of different ed choice programs, and so I know that takes up a large portion of our administrators' time, and so I'm here to help support them through some of those things. So it's really it's pretty wide open. If an administrator or principal has a question, if they need anything, I would always encourage them to have their ed exec on the top of their list as maybe one of their first emails or first phone calls, because we're here to help find a solution or find an answer. And we don't always have the answer or solution ourselves, but we can help direct you to a resource or another administrator or someone else who can help you out.
Yeah, and that's really important if you're listening to this and you haven't ever reached out to your ed exec for anything. Either you're the best principal in the entire world and you don't need any advice at all, or you're doing what a lot of us fall into the trap of doing. Oh, I don't want to bother them. They're probably really busy. Yes, they're really busy, but they really want to hear from you. They really want you to, quote unquote, bother them. They're not in the trenches with you day to day. So if something's happening in your school, they don't know about it unless someone tells them about it. And a lot of the time, that someone really needs to be you. So really reach out, really use them as a resource. And because of the kind of decentralized nature of Lutheran education, there's no top-down, hey, you must do all these things. If your ed exec tells you, hey, you should be doing this, they're not saying that lightly, and they're not saying that for their own health. They don't throw that out all that often. So if they say, hey, you should be doing this, really take that to heart and really consider, should I be doing this? And if they say you have to do this, you have to do that. That's just how it goes. They don't say that all that often either.
Well, and I think as I've gotten to know many of the other ed execs in the Synod throughout many different districts, I think one thing that a lot of ed execs, if not all of them, are really good at is just listening. That is really a skill you have to have in order to be an ed exec. And so you may have a specific question or a specific need, and they could provide a resource or a tool for you, but they could also just be someone to listen. When you are an administrator, sometimes you can feel like you are on an island all by yourself, and there's not a lot of people that may be in your school who know what it's like to sit in your chair. But an ed exec will, and whether they can provide you with some direction or resources or just be a listening ear, it can be very, very helpful to the administrator.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been blessed to have wonderful ed execs in the districts where I've served, and that's exactly a resource that I think has been provided. And I've really felt supported through that, because ed execs see things from a different perspective as well. And I think sometimes administrators, we get stuck in the mud, and to be able to share with somebody is really helpful. But it's difficult in our roles, because who do you share with? You're leading an organization, and you can't really share with certain people in the organization if that's where the struggle is taking place. But and sometimes you're just so in it that to talk to somebody who's a safe space, who has experience and can provide perspective, I think is huge. As administrators, sometimes we feel like we're stuck on an island. And the other way that I felt very blessed by my ed execs is that you have connections to other principals as well. So if I've come to you with a question, you can say, I may not have the answer, but check out what this person's doing, or maybe give that person a call. The conduit for networking that you've provided, that all the ed execs provide, I think is really a rich resource for Lutheran school administrators too. Kevin, if you were to say, what are some of the top ways that you support administrators? Let's start there. Later, I'm going to come with the question about ways that ed execs support teachers. We've talked a little bit about connections, but what are some of and knowing, I guess, state regulations and so forth, but what are some other ways, or some really fun ways that you enjoy supporting the administrators in the district?
I have, when you're an ed exec and you're not necessarily, like you said, in the trenches, the opportunity to gather in person with people, with administrators, is always something that I've enjoyed and I appreciate. So in our district, a couple ways we do that is we have monthly principal meetings. And so to be able to, and we do, 1 month will be in person, the next month will be over Zoom. So especially those times, those regional meetings where we can gather as a smaller group of principals and have time to sit around a table as a group and collaborate and talk through questions or issues, enjoy a meal together, enjoy lunch, that fellowship time, that's some of my favorite times. It just, and bringing those principals together is something that to me that's one of the best times, because you're bringing together a lot of different minds, a lot of different experiences, and you're just bringing together that opportunity to collaborate. And then twice a year we have conferences where the whole district gets together. So I enjoy planning those, and I enjoy bringing people together. And just for any of you administrators out there, the Ohio district is a great district, and we work hard and we play hard. And I'll put that plug out there for Ohio for
you guys heard that. If it's call season, and I think it's always now call season.
Yeah, there's a couple of vacancies here, but I tell you, maybe not after people hear what you do.
So Kevin, what would you say to somebody who says, those meetings sound great, but I just don't have the time? There's too many things going on at my school. Maybe they're a teaching principal. I don't have the time to get to those. It should be a priority, great, but if something really is important, you'll send me an email, so I don't need to go. What would you say to that person to maybe convince them to put the effort forth to get to those meetings?
I I have just found a lot of value in those personal connections. And we had a fall educators conference here in Ohio a couple um, weeks ago. And one of our keynote speakers talked about this, and he really encouraged teachers to find other educators who are in a similar role or a similar position as they are. So, and I thought that was I think he understood the room very well, because we have a lot of Lutheran schools that are single graded, right? So if you're the fifth grade teacher in your Lutheran school, you are the only fifth grade teacher. There's not a whole fifth grade department. So you have to seek out other fifth grade teachers, maybe in other Lutheran schools or other Christian schools near you, and develop that network. And so that was an encouragement that was given to teachers. And I fully agree. And that's what I would say to principals. We just mentioned that a few minutes ago. You're on an island, and every you do not know what it's like to be in any position really until you're actually in the position, right? This is not exclusive to principals. It's the same for pastors or ed execs or becoming a teacher, right? A kid out of college doesn't know exactly what it's like to teach until you're actually in that chair. So it can get lonely in the position of being a principal, because you are the only principal in the school. And I think that personal connection, that networking that you can have with other administrators is going to be very valuable in the long run, because A, they know what you're going through. B, they've had similar experiences as you. They also can help. I think there's two more parts to this. Number one, they can help you. If you're having a challenge, or you have a question, or you have a vision for something, they can help you. The other thing, and we're, as Lutherans, I think we don't pat ourselves on the back, but you also have the opportunity to impact other administrators. So if you take that time to go to that meeting or go to that conference, not only you have no idea what you're going to receive, but in turn, you can offer something to someone else. And again, it can be a suggestion, or it can be sharing something you do at your school, or it could be just listening to someone else share about some concerns at their school, and you give them that listening ear. So the personal connection is so important. The networking is so important. And I think if you gather with those principal meetings or conferences or whatever they do in your district, not only can you receive something from that, but you have something to offer too.
And I would definitely agree with that. So my first principal call, I was in a very geographically dispersed region in Wisconsin, something like 3 hours from top to bottom in driving distance. Since there was one other school near me, and then all the other ones were a 2.5 hour drive or a 2 hour drive away. And those meetings sometimes got canceled, and they were quarterly. And so I don't know, maybe I'm not supposed to do this, but there was another region 40 minutes away that always met 40 minutes away and met monthly. And so I would go to them when my other meeting wasn't happening. I'm not recommending, I guess, that anybody in Ohio jump region, but those
you
meetings,
don't want to go to Michigan. No, I'm just kidding. I love Michigan.
But those meetings are very important, and there definitely is value there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, Rob, you said earlier, sometimes the idea for principals is, you can just email me, I can get all the information there. Yeah, you can get some information that way, but having experienced this as well, you can even get the email, but when you go and you have discussion on something, you hear what other questions people might have that maybe you didn't think of, or there's so much more depth in a conversation than there can possibly be in an email. But Kevin, I like the way you put that as well, that people have things to offer. And I know early on when I was an administrator, and still to this day, I very much feel that way of, I'm kind of stuck in my own school. I know what I'm doing here. What can I offer other people? But you never know how God is going to use you. I mean, each person is a gift with unique talents and unique abilities. And sometimes you're just going to say something that's going to strike somebody in a particular way. So where you say you might not have time to attend those meetings, I would argue that it's going to save you a lot of time down the road if you can go and be in person and both receive and share at the same time.
And one more point too is when you're in person, And the blessing we have in being Lutheran administrators is the opportunity to be together in the same room and to be in the Word and to be in prayer together. And I think it, for me, it's still a shock if I go to a meeting at the Ohio Department of Education and the meeting just starts, and you think to yourself, well, why did we didn't start in prayer, right? That's how you start meetings in Lutheran education. And so to be able to be together, to be in God's Word, to pray for one another, is something too that you don't take that lightly. That's something that we need to recognize and appreciate and give thanks to God for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, Kevin, we've talked a lot about how ed execs support administrators, but if we can shift the conversation a little bit and talk about the role of ed execs in supporting teachers. Now, sometimes, I always thought that it was just really the ed execs are supporting the admin to do their job with the teachers, but you've shown me a different role that you have, because you've done some tremendous work in supporting teachers directly as well. Can you talk about some of the things that you've done to show your support for the teachers in the schools?
Sure. There's a couple things. Number one, just like I always want to be available for administrators, I'm available for teachers too. And so when you've been in the district for almost 6 years now, you get to know the teachers. It takes a little longer to get to know teachers than the administrators, but I find more and more the longer you're here, the more contacts you'll get from teachers, the more you get to know them because you're in schools and you're doing chapels and going to graduations or whatever it is. One of the big things I do that I've done the last 2 years to try to connect with teachers, and I've gotten this idea from some other ed execs throughout the synod, is I've begun meeting individually with each teacher when I do my school visits. So typically, I try to visit every elementary school every year. A lot of times that visit will start with a leading chapel or leading the message for the chapel service. And then I'll spend the rest of the day meeting with teachers, and they're 10 or 15-minute meetings at the most. Principal may get a sub, and that sub will just go and release the teachers, and the teacher will come meet with me. And it's basically, how's your school year going, and how's your ministry going this year? Just real laid back, real casual, but just gives me the opportunity to hear how those teachers are doing, get a little bit more of a feel for how things are going in the school. I love hearing about their background. Another common question is, how did you get connected to Bethany? How did you end up here? So whether it's, I was called here out of college, or I found the position on Indeed, or whatever it is, but there's always some kind of story that goes along with that. So I really enjoy listening, hearing how their year's going, and just hearing their story, how they ended up in Lutheran education or how they ended up at this specific school. And inevitably, there's sometimes I hear things that I'm really glad that I had that opportunity to hear about a challenge or a struggle or even a joy in ministry. I get a lot of ideas, because a lot of teachers are willing to say, hey, I've got this idea, or I wish the district could help with this. And so that's been helpful. So that's something I've invested a lot of time in last year and this year. And it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. I hope the teachers are enjoying them as much as I do. And then there's a few other ways too. Professional development is another big area. So in Ohio, we just had a teachers conference that we planned for the teachers, and we also sometimes we'll do. We've done webinars and we've done workshops. If I come across any kind of professional development conferences or free conferences or webinars or things like that, I'll always push that onto the principals to share with their teachers. We brought in Tech 21 last year to the district for the first time, and so Tech 21, if you don't know what that stands for, Technology Enriched Classrooms, and so it's a technology professional development opportunity for a cohort of teachers to meet throughout an entire school year, and they work with a facilitator to learn about different technology tools that they can use in the classroom. So that was we brought that in the district for the first time last year. I know many districts have Tech 21 cohorts, and so that's another great opportunity as well. So And then we're also here if teachers are going through the call process, if you are looking into, how I'm new to the state, how do I get my teacher's license? And then just supporting and caring for workers too. And the district will do that for teachers, principals, pastors, DCEs, and whether it's providing, some care resources or counseling when needed, or financial wellness resources, or helping you understand your benefits if you're with Concordia plans. Some districts have student loan repayment programs. So there's a lot of ways that the district can work directly with teachers and just help support them in their ministry.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's been a huge blessing here too. I think as you've been in the classrooms, you've been able to see some of the things and hear directly from the teachers and see the things that would benefit them. And I personally was a witness to this when I know you were in the classrooms and then we had the teachers conference. You found the keynotes, you found the breakouts that were direct links to what the teachers were yearning for in their professional growth. So I think that's fantastic. And I would venture to say most of the ed execs, if not all the ed execs, have that same drive, that same passion to do that kind of work. So I really encourage anybody listening to get to know your ed exec well, because that's going to be time well spent.
It's great to hear that you're working with the teachers, visiting all them, meeting with all of them. That's fantastic. Where did you get that idea? You said that somebody else gave you that. Who gave you that idea?
So I know off the top of my head of two ed execs who do that. Bill Hens in Texas, and then DJ Schultz in North Wisconsin do that. And so I've talked to both of them, and I've modeled it after kind of the way they talk about how they do it. So it's been awesome, and it's something I'm going to do every year. And I'm blessed to be in Ohio just from the number of schools, number of teachers, and also the geographic region that I'm in. It's very manageable to be able to do that. If you were in there's some districts that are three or four times the size of Ohio, and that could be difficult to do. But so yeah, those are the two guys that have talked about it. There may be more that do it, but those are the two that I talked to and kind of developed the way I do it based on what they shared with me.
That's interesting to hear that Bill's doing that, because Texas, for those of you who don't know, the Texas district is Texas. So it's huge. I think it takes like 15 hours to drive from the west side of Texas to the east side of Texas, something like that. It's quite the commitment he's making. That's awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if he does every school every year, because they have I think they're top 3 or 4 in number of schools as far as a district goes. So I don't know if he does it every school every year. He could. I know Bill. He has the energy and the ability to do it. So if he does it every year, I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah.
Kevin, what's one thing you would, talking to the principals listening, meeting with the teachers, you hear things that maybe they haven't brought up to their principals. And I'm sure you always say, hey, this would be really great to bring to your principal. I'm sure you tell them that. But there's probably a thread there somewhere that you could say, okay, if every principal just started doing, X thing tomorrow, 50% of the teachers would be happier. 50% of the teachers would feel more supported. What would that thing be?
That's a good question. I don't know if this is the easy way out, but if I were to answer that right away, I think I'd say do the same thing. I would set aside time to meet with the teachers, and since you're in the same building and you are their principal, you could probably do it twice a year or 3 times a year. But it doesn't have to be very long. I mean, it's 10 or 15 minutes at the most, and you don't have to. I don't prepare anything when I go into these meetings. So it's not like parent teacher conferences, right? Where the teachers have to get the report cards ready and prepare. That's a lot of work. This is just listening. And I think if the principals took some time, maybe before school started and then halfway through the school year, and said, okay, this day is set aside for my teacher meetings, and I'm going to 10 or 15 minutes, I'm just going to say, hey, how are you doing? And then you just listen. So I think taking that opportunity to to listen is very valuable. It's something that we probably the first time I heard this idea was when I read the book Way to Go by Mary Beth Gartner. And when I was a principal, we implemented her program called Tell the Teacher More Day. And that's where before school starts, you basically have parent teacher conferences where the teachers they invite the parents to come in for a conference, but it's different than the one that happens in October where you talk about how the student is doing in class. This is just an opportunity for the parent to talk to the teacher about their child before the school year begins. When we did that, when I was a principal, it was very well received by teachers, very well received by parents. And I think it kind of goes along the lines of what Rob, you were asking. What would you tell a principal who says, I just don't have the time to go to these principal meetings, right? Well, what would you tell to the principal that says, I just don't have the time to talk, meet with teachers all day long? I think if you just sit down and you intentionally listen to what the teachers have to say, there's a lot of information you're going to get. You're going to kind of get a feel for how things are going. But then there's just a lot of value in the teachers feeling like they've been heard.
I think that's a great piece of advice. And if you're sitting here as a principal and listening and you're like, well, but that's going to be really uncomfortable for me. Maybe it might be, but there's an opportunity there to fix that, because if you're uncomfortable even thinking about it, then there are things that aren't going so well, and you get a better handle on that. And sometimes, this is going to sound crazy because as principals, we're very results oriented. Sometimes just letting somebody talk about it is all that they need to do. They don't want you to fix anything. They don't need you to change anything. They just want to know that you hear them, and then they're happier. So there are benefits to it for sure. That's great advice, Kevin. Thank you.
Great. Well, I think we've really laid out a lot of things here, Kevin. I appreciate all that you do, and just thanks for taking some time to talk to us a little bit about this. If you're listening, I'm going to encourage you. First off, reach out to your ed exec. Just say hi. Ed execs they have a difficult job as well, and I think just hearing the list of the ways that you support people, I have a pretty good idea of what how you fill 40, 80, 120 hours a week. So. I encourage you as well as an administrator to reach out and just say thanks to your ed exec. Support them, pray for them, let them know that you're doing that, because they have a very unique role as well, and it's a very necessary role, I think, for all of the administrators, for all of those who serve in Lutheran schools. So we definitely appreciate all that you do. And Rob, do you want to close us out with prayer?
Yeah. Although one question: is there an ed exec appreciation day? I mean, principals, we get like a whole week, and then we get a Sunday. Teachers get 2 weeks. Has Synod made this? Does this exist yet?
You just started the thing.
Yeah, I think you should look into that, Rob. That sounds like a great idea to me.
I'll talk to Al. We'll see what he can do.
Okay.
Okay, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for the work Kevin does supporting the Lutheran schools in Ohio. Please be with those schools, their leaders, their teachers, and their families. Please bless the work that you've placed before us. It's important work. It's difficult, and it is rewarding. And we get to do it for your glory. And so that to which we pray. Amen.